Good afternoon.
We talked too late.
We are going to start our study session. Thank you. I have item number 9, and that one is ready.
Who told me to do that?
Councilor Caldwell.
Thank you, Madam President. Blessings to all today. I have items 10 through 15, and are you ready?
10 is withdrawn.
Oh, 10, yeah, I apologize. 10 is withdrawn.
Kaylin,
Yes. Commissioner Julie LaFave, Parks and Rec Department. So item 10 is being withdrawn. Item 11 is to enter into agreement with both Onondaga County and Friends of Second Chance to use their facility for adoptions for dogs. Item number 12 is to accept money from National Grid, but then allow National Grid to write that check to the Syracuse Parks Conservancy to implement and promote the Urban Forestry Master Plan.
Okay.
Item 13 is...
Wait a minute.
Oh.
Any questions? Okay, go ahead.
Item 13 is to authorize payments to various performers at a cost not to exceed $2,000 for Big Rig Day. Item 14 and 15 are not mine.
Deputy Mayor.
Sorry, I'm not used to following behind Julie. 14 is asking the council to approve allocation of funds, $600,000, coming back to you for the Summer Youth Program, Fellows Program. And 15 is to enter an agreement with the organization Syracuse Urban Partnership that would administer the funds. 5% of the 600 would go towards administrative costs.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
This is the program we've done the last 2 summers.
Yes.
Yep, want to get another one in.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Councilor Green.
Thank you, Madam President. I have items 16 through 19. Those are all ready unless there's any questions from councilors. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Paniagua.
Good afternoon. I have item number 20. If there are no questions, it's ready. Hearing none, it's ready.
Councilor Gathers.
Thank you, Madam President. My items 21 through, 38. Oh, yep, through 38.
I got something to say.
Commissioner.
Can I please?
Sure.
Thank you. So, my understanding that the CART program that is going to be proposed today is going to be 10 carts for 10 units.
You're fine.
With no authority to me to amend it, which I think that's a big mistake. 10 carts is a lot. And I don't think that every 10-unit apartment is going to use 10 carts. So in the legislation, it didn't give me power to say if they're not going to use them, we can take them back. So I would like the council to give me power to amend if necessary.
Well, could we make an amendment that doesn't just affect the 10 units, but potentially a 4-unit building that might only need 2?
Perfect.
I mean, this is a pilot program, so in theory, we should be learning things, and there are RFID chips on them, right? So if we can get those readers in place even sooner, you can see what actually cans are being used and which ones aren't.
No, yeah, I get that. And that's what I'm proposing. Right now, the legislation don't give me any power to do so. So I would beg you to give me power to do so if need be.
So, Commissioner, so with that saying, if someone calls you and say, okay, we have a 8-unit apartment, but we only need 4 or 5, you want to be able to say, okay, we're going to take these away regardless and not have to worry about the trash, right?
Yes. Because you think about it, it's going to be double once we do recycling. So 10 will be 20 once we have recycling.
So
that's a
if
lot.
tenants change, then you can change that back.
I didn't hear you. What did you say?
If the basic go through the trial and change come in the back apartment and building, can you then change too?
I would love that too. I would love to have the power to do that as well. So amending the ordinance right now would give me power to do such. things.
Well, amending the ordinance, we would have to hold it to amend, correct?
Yeah.
The city, now, I think, I'm sorry, I've only been around for a few years. I think this is an operational matter, what you're talking about. We talked about this morning.
Yeah.
You got 5 routes.
Yep.
You know, that we're going to start off with. We don't know how many of these big buildings are on those 5 routes. Do we know?
So we do know. I mean, we would know how many are on each route. The issue is the legislation says 1 cart per unit, so it doesn't give the commissioner any discretion. And we have made it clear from the beginning that 10 carts for 10 units is not feasible.
Well, not feasible.
Operationally, it's not going to work. 10 carts for 10 units is too much.
I disagree. I have complete...
Well, I'm deferring to the commissioner of DPW.
I'm patient the commissioner to make
Right.
this thing work. I think he can make it work.
But
I just
he
think
can't make it, okay.
You're talking about 10, I mean, I know you're concerned about the units being in the right, the receptacles being in the right of way. I know that's a concern of yours. That's a valid concern. I feel that this legislation we can pass, and this is an operational matter that you can follow up to talk to the people and say, do you really need 10 receptacles?
Whether or not they need them is not the issue. The legislation ties our hands that we have to give 10 carts to 10 units. Whether or not they need them is irrelevant. We have to give them 10 carts. And if they're not using them, do we break into their basement and take them back? I mean, it's 10.
You think you can fit them in the basement?
It's 10.
Don't worry about the right of way.
All I'm saying is this legislation just ties our hands that we have to give 1 cart per unit, and we would like to propose with the council's, agreement to negotiate a scaled back number of carts per unit. Now, we had proposed 4, understanding that's not enough. So is there some place between 10 and 4 that we can agree on? And this in part stems from the conversation that we had when we wanted to scale back the number of units altogether, and we heard from several councilors saying, then don't do 1 for 1. Maybe an 8 unit doesn't need 8 carts, and we'd like that flexibility.
Well, I would propose that instead we do a couple of weeks of these routes, and then come back for a committee meeting to find out if this is feasible or not.
I would prefer to go with a smaller number and then come back and say, as it turns out, 7 isn't enough, we need to add.
Suppose it's not enough then.
Then rather than it's much easier to give more than to take it away. And I think Commissioner Robinson, overseeing sanitation, relying on his expertise, would know, you know what, 7 ends up not being enough. Let's add another one, adding instead of taking away.
I think a pilot's a pilot, and we should not change
So it's not a
anything.
pilot. I mean, it's a phased rollout. It's not a pilot. A pilot implies that we're going to take all this stuff back, and we're not. It's a phased rollout. This is phase 1.
I don't think it applies that at all. I think this is basically, you're just using a different word. This is a pilot.
Okay, it's a pilot. So as a pilot, based on best practices, no municipality has a 1 for 1 for 10 units. 10 carts for 10 units is not feasible. And so I think, to Jeremy's point, to give him the discretion, whether it's in a number that we agree upon, or he has the discretion to meet the apartment's needs, but to do 1 for 1 is just operationally, which we've made clear from the beginning, a challenge for us. And I think there are other municipalities we could look to see how we could service them better.
Right. Just speaking for myself, I think the position I've had, and I think other councils have had, we want to make sure that no one loses service, right? That those people
Correct.
And that people have enough trash cans that they're not trying to stuff in more than would fit, and there's litter everywhere, right? I think that's the main thing that the council wants to make sure. And for me, having 10 bins is not, it's a position, but it's just to make sure we cover those 2 issues, which is making sure people don't lose service and that there's not litter everywhere. So is it possible to go look at the other municipalities and give the council data to say in other places,
absolutely,
1 unit gets 0.75 a trash bin or whatever, just so that because I think we want to make sure we cover the constituents, and if we had hard data and had in our hands, I personally would feel more comfortable at it.
We would be happy to provide that information to the council of how other municipalities can make sure they're not cutting off service and that they're providing adequate disposal for these larger unit apartments.
And then it would be up to council together how you want to do it, but in theory, I think you could pass this and then they could come back next time with that, or you hold it and wait till that comes in, whatever you want to do.
We would want to address it before we actually deliver the carts.
pass the thing, let's go.
I just want to make one more point, is that I've seen the Department of Public Works over the years, and the commissioner is one of the great commissioners that we've had. They have handled incredible amounts of waste disposal situations for years. And to say that they can't do it, they can't feasibly do this, I don't believe it.
I think the workers' comp claims and cost show what that's costing DPW to provide that service, is that they're doing it at the cost of their bodies.
I would submit that the supervision of our guys actually doing this the way it's supposed to be done is probably a bigger mountain to climb than anything these guys can't accomplish as far as picking up trash.
I'm deferring to Commissioner Robinson when he thinks 10 units is going to be an operational challenge for sanitation. I take him at his word.
So, Corey, when you say operational challenge, you're saying, is it time?
It's time, it's size, it's logistics. I mean, you know, having 20 carts, which is what we're eventually talking about, 20 carts is 5 parking spots in front of. We're going to be taking up 5 parking spots worth of space with carts for a 10-unit apartment building.
Okay, but not even that. Like, what the logistic part is it? How is it affecting DPW?
It is, I mean, it is the amount of time. It's definitely the amount of time it's going to take to do that. It's also, you know, in terms of aesthetics, in terms of storage, you know, to reduce the number of carts just seems a better solution for our workforce and also for the residents of the area. To have 20 carts out in front is going to take an enormous amount of time for our crews to empty.
So it's more like time. Is that what it is?
People that's not going to put out there.
5 routes that we're trying to find, how many routes have the 10 units?
We have the 10 units spread out throughout the route. So I mean, they would be on there, so we'd be able to see.
Right. So how many though? Do you guys have the number?
There's about 9.
9.
Yeah, throughout the entire phase rollout, throughout the entire pilot, there are about 9 of those 10-unit apartment buildings.
So Corey, in those stage rollout, what's the time between again?
You mean how long do we plan to do it?
How long before we move on?
I mean, we were hoping to do it 3 months, but obviously, you know, coming to an agreement with the council is important.
I think for the sake of what we are trying to do here, because let's just wait in the next 3 months before we go to the second pilot or stage, you know, to see how that worked out. Did the 10 unit in that during that time frame use all the 10 containers, or they didn't? I think for us it would show us the data that we need to really solidify where
I don't disagree. I think it would be easier for us to give a smaller number of carts, see whether or not it's meeting the need, rather than having the sanitation crews each time they go count how many carts each apartment building is using. Rather, they would see they've put out all the carts they can and there's still an excess need, which then we could track a lot easier than counting the number of carts and seeing whether or not people are using all the carts that we gave them. Yeah. So I mean, I don't disagree with you, Counselor. I think having this as a part of that pilot, of that phase rollout makes sense, but I think we'd rather start with a lower number of carts and add to it as the pilot goes on, rather than start with 10 units and then try to take them back if it turns out they don't need them.
Thank you.
It's exactly the opposite way of what I do. I worry.
Well, I don't know if that's a point of pride or what.
Can I ask a quick question? If the special pickups, the 4 times a year, is that going to be changed? In
no, none of the other. No, other. You know, that's a. There are a lot of amendments we need to make to the solid waste ordinance that we will work with the council on, but nothing else is changing at this point.
Okay. One other quick question. You have the ticketing in section 14-70, penalties and remediations for violation, and there's 4 steps that are done. Provide notice on site. So is that a sticker? Is that what?
That's a ticket that's left at the property.
So it's left on the actual building. And then it says mail, notice, or certified mail.
Yes.
Is that done also, or is that an or?
Yes, that's also, yeah, we also mail a ticket out to the owner.
So, and if it's uncorrected in 24 hours, then it will be cleaned up by the city?
Yes.
So I'm still having a hard time understanding the mail is not 24 hours. So if the first notification to the property is in the mail, you've already cleaned that up, and there's already been $250.
There's a ticket at the property, so it's sort of, you know, there's a ticket on your car. That's how you're notified that you've been ticketed. So there's a ticket at the property, and then we mail the notice out.
If it's not an owner-occupied property, then the owner may not have a clue that there's an issue until they get it in the mail.
Correct.
Which obviously the city thinks that mailing is good communication, but I say you're tying their hands. So And when I talked to your team back in January, you said that you recognize that this is a problem and that you're working on a way to resolve it.
Yes.
So if this isn't resolved yet, I don't know why this process is still in place, because again, it's setting people up and it's setting the BAA up to have to deal with all these appeals. And do you still think that's an okay way?
So, I mean, that's the way we have right now. That there is discretion built into the process that if there are legitimate delays and why the property manager didn't notice there was an illegal set out, the tenant didn't reach out that they had received a ticket, all the other ways that the owner could be notified that an illegal set out was ticketed, you know, then there is discretion built in the process if there are extenuating circumstances. But we are working on a software product that would have email as an automatic notification to the owner or the email address associated with the property as soon as the ticket's issued.
I have a question, Corey, and I apologize if this was already answered. So when we bring the carts, right, and say there's extra trash laid out there because they couldn't put it in there, what happens then?
Then that's an illegal set out. I mean, same as, you know, right now everybody, a single family house has 96 gallons of trash that they can put out, bagged trash. Right now that's really difficult to measure of how much is 96 gallons. But when you have the tote, the ordinance says, and this isn't anything that's changing with the carts, the ordinance says if you exceed 96 gallons of bagged trash, that's an illegal set out.
So that's moving from my question is, what about the apartment? So when that happens, like, what are we going to do? Because we know we have a lot of trash in our community. We need to do better.
So I think as part, if we find that, you know, in other municipalities, to Councilor Green's point, in other municipalities, we have spoken to them to say, how do you service, and we've spoken with cart companies, how do you service these larger apartments? We have yet to find anyone that does a 1-for-1. So in other municipalities, an 8-unit makes it work with 6 carts. That is sufficient to satisfy the 8 units because some units have a lot of people, some units don't have a lot of people. You know, so I mean, we would evaluate whether or not the current cart number is meeting the need, and if it's not, it's much easier to add than it is to try and take those carts back.
Corey, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
If we went with a smaller number, who do people ask for more bins, and how long does it take to get them where they need to be?
So, I mean, you know, we will have the bins available at DPW, so it's as long as it takes for someone to deliver it. So I don't see any delay in the number. I mean, and this is all part of...
So they will be delivered?
So they will be delivered, yes. We will have spares stored at the city that we can deliver, that DPW can deliver. But, I mean, part of the reason why we wanted to scale back these large apartment buildings in the first place was the number of carts we were going to have to deliver. If we wanted to do a 1-for-1 and to do these larger apartment buildings, we had a concern about 9, 10, and eventually with recycling, 20 carts sitting at the curb. The council understandably and respectfully pushed back and said, we don't want to cut off service to those large apartment buildings. That's fine, but if we are going to do that, we still need to address the number of carts. And based on expertise from sanitation and Commissioner Robinson, 20 carts when we move to recycling is too much. I understand maybe not everybody puts them out every week, but they could because they have 20 carts. So to hope that people aren't using all the number of carts that we've given them is not really a feasible option. You know, if we limit the number of carts, which other municipalities have done, they don't do a 1-for-1, we feel that we can still meet the need of these larger apartment buildings.
I know. One real quick question. Corey, I looked at the numbers, right? And it was 64 buildings that had 8 and higher. And 65% of them have dumpsters already. So do you think that the folks that already have dumpsters would want to switch over to carts?
So I think there's an argument either way. Why would they pay for a service that now they're getting for free from the city? Why would you keep a dumpster that you're paying for when now you can just put your trash in totes?
Because it's a lot more work. They have to drag those to the curb.
And the other argument,
don't want to do that.
The other argument is that dumpsters are a lot more convenient. You don't have to worry about when you set it out, you know, when you have to pull it back from the curb. So I think there are arguments either way. We won't know until we roll it out. But again, you know, doing 10 for 10 as a starting point, we just don't feel is feasible.
I think the salient point is we don't know until we roll it out, and we have a pilot.
Right, and so we're basing our pilot on best practices, on talking to other municipalities, on doing 2.5 years of work that the council instructed they wanted us to do to put together a sanitation plan. We've talked to industry experts, we've talked to subject matter experts, we've talked to other municipalities, we've put out 2 reports. We're basing this reduced number of carts on best practices in other municipalities, and we just ask that you allow us to implement that best practice here, and if we need to change it because of unique conditions that exist, then we can do that. But to have a baseline that is based in what other municipalities do, what industry experts are telling us, is the preferred method for us, rather than 10 for 10, because that's the easiest one to do.
But how about the other municipalities that tried it and didn't keep it?
I'm not aware of any that had scaled number of carts and then decided to change it. And speaking with cart manufacturers and people that are trying to sell us more carts, they have shared with us what other municipalities have done as well, and it's a scaled number of carts.
So Corey, just while we are on this topic, what about the situation where if a resident get their car stolen or lost, how did we remediate that?
So it's in the legislation that we will replace it.
Or replace it, no cost?
As of right now, no cost.
No cost, okay, because it's...
I watched some walk line the other day. So,
well, and that's the other thing too, is that obviously the more number of carts you have at the curb, the increased likelihood is that if you've got 20 carts at the curb, it's a lot easier to walk away with one.
So Corey, I don't think any of the counselors we are trying to like make this difficult.
Sure.
But our concern is we want to make sure that the city is clean.
Absolutely.
Sure everyone that has a trash can, can put their trash in a trash can, and that the constituents are not being penalized because they have too much trash.
Sure.
And then it's outside, and
Sure.
then the owners are being charged. Now they're getting charged, right?
Right.
So we just want to make sure that there's enough, right? And if there's more and it's too many, it seems like it's easier to take away than to add.
So I mean, the reality is, in this pilot program, we will likely end up picking up bags of trash that are outside of the cart, because that will be part of the process of figuring out, look, what we're providing is not sufficient. And we can do, 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in, 4 weeks in, a report to the council on how this is operating and what challenges we're already seeing. We're just asking, is there a meeting point between, we'd like 4, the council would like 10, is there a compromise we can come to? And we're putting forth what other municipalities do as an
Do they
option.
get fined right now? So if they have trash on the outside, they'll be fined?
Right now, because people aren't using carts, people are just putting bags of trash at the curb. It's hard to tell from just bags of trash how much is 96 gallons.
So say if we gave them 5 carts and now there's trash outside through the pilot, they're going to be charged, right?
So no, I mean, I think we would use the pilot as a way to assess, are we providing enough containers? And if we're not providing enough containers, we'd come back to the council to say, we ended up picking up extra bags of trash that were outside of these carts. So, you let us, we are telling you 5 was not enough. We got to go to 6. But
So
that would,
no, they will not be charged.
they would not be, no, I don't think I think that's counter to the pilot. If we're looking to assess how the carts are meeting the needs, I think ticketing people likely goes against that.
What's the assessment period?
So we have it, so what we plan to do was about 3 months of phase 1, which is about 20% of the city. And then we'd roll it out citywide, hopefully in phase 2.
Is that where Rubicon comes in? Rubicon or whoever?
Rubicon will be something that we'll be using throughout the whole process. It'll definitely be a help, though, because we'll be able to take photos and track things a lot better, but we're just not there yet.
I think we want to remind the council, I just want to remind the council, Councilor Greenspoint, President Hudson, and Councilor Caldwell all brought this up, is that our worry was that this extra price, extra costs, we're forcing people to get private haulers, is going to be laid upon the tenants of those buildings, who are mostly working class folks in the city.
Understood.
So that's what the worry was.
Right,
If we
and
take
that's
away a service that they've had for years, the landlords are going to lay that cost onto the tenants.
And that's why we completely rolled back any reduction of service for up to 10 units. We said we wanted to limit service to 1, 2, and 3. The council said we're not comfortable with that. We said, how about 1 through 4? The council's not comfortable with that. They said it's 1 through 10, and that's it. Totally, that's absolutely a fine point of view. I respect that. I understand that. So we are keeping it at 1 to 10. What we're saying is we don't think a 1-for-1 is necessary, at least not in the first pilot. Let us roll it out based on what other municipalities have done and found to be successful, and then we will come back to the council to say it met the need, or it met the need for 10 units, but it didn't meet the need for 7 units, and then we can make decisions informed by a best practice and how it's actually operating in the field.
Well, I would submit that the pilot would prove that, but I think you should, like Councilor Caldwell just said, it's easier to take that away than it is to add.
I disagree, and in talking to other municipalities, that's not the experience that they have had. I'm not disagreeing that that might end up being the need, but we're basing this on what other municipalities do. and have found to be successful.
Just give property owners a right to surrender bins if they don't think they need them, but don't limit them out of the gate.
And then the owner changes, and then we got to bring them back, and then we got to keep track of who we took them back from and who we gave them
I
to.
really don't think that's going to happen every other week.
I mean, knowing the administrative capacity of DPW, I think it is a likely, which is why we moved away from different sizes, because to keep track of all that information as ownership changes, particularly in a municipality with high rentals where tenants are turning over, needs change, we want to give everybody the same. And again, we're just asking to mirror what other municipalities have done, have found to be successful, and then we are open to admitting that, you know what, it ended up not being what we needed, and we will come before the council to change it. But I think starting there makes more sense than trying to start at 1 for 1, because that's just the most straightforward way, when it's not based on what has been successful in other municipalities.
Thank you, Corey. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you, Commissioner. The rest of the items 24 through 39. 38, excuse me.
They're ready?
All are ready now, unless there's any other questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
All righty. I guess Councilor Hogan.
Thank you, President Hudson. I have items 39 through 44. I'm going to call them all ready, except for 42 and 43, I will hold. I will not, because I will have a meeting later in the week on both.
42 and 43?
Hell,
Yeah, he's not.
everything else is ready.
He's not taking.
All righty. Councilor Majuk.
Thank you, Madam President. I have item 45 and 46. They are ready, but I got a question. I think there was a point brought up last week about 46 and it being blue line.
Oh, it's corrected.
Is that corrected?
Yeah, that's
All right.
corrected.
Anybody else?
It's just an error, on
Questions?
typographical error.
Yeah. You don't need to be here, Chief. Appreciate it. All right. Any question? Nope. Thank you.
Councilor Allen.
Thank you. I have items 47 and 48. Do we have any updates on any of these?
47 is being withdrawn, right, Brian?
So we're still withdrawing 47? Okay. So we just have item 48 is going to be ready.
Helen.
Thank you.
So,
All set.
Yes.
Councilor Montos.
Thank you, President Hudson. I have item 49 on behalf of the entire council, and I will call that ready.
are you going to introduce it and table it?
And table it, introduce it and table it.
Council President, going back to 10, that's going to be withdrawn.
10?
Yeah. Just want to let you know. Yeah.
10?
Oh, she said that? Okay, cool. All right.
Yeah. Councilor Hogan.
Thank you, President Hudson. I will ask for a waiver of the rules to introduce.
That's up top. Okay, thank you. All righty, and with that, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Meeting adjourned.